Russian President Vladimir Putin has announced a unilateral three-day ceasefire in Ukraine starting next week on May 8th. The Kremlin says the decision coincides with commemorations marking the end of World War II in Europe and is also based on what they say were humanitarian considerations. But an advisor to the head of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's office is calling the move Putin's tactical games. And President Trump is signaling he wants more. Here's CNN's Matthew Chance.
President Putin.
From the Kremlin, the announcement of a new ceasefire. For 3 days in May, the Kremlin says its guns will fall silent. To show Washington, in the words of one Russian official, that Moscow wants a stable, permanent peace. But President Trump, fresh from a face-to-face meeting with the Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky on the sidelines of the papal funeral in Rome, wants substantial progress in his flagging peace effort, not empty gestures.
Vladimir Putin this morning offered a temporary ceasefire. The president has made it clear he wants to see a permanent ceasefire, first to stop the killing, stop the bloodshed. And while he remains optimistic he can strike a deal, he's also being realistic as well.
But realistically, the latest Kremlin offer may amount to little more than its last one. An Easter truce that followed this deadly strike on Palm Sunday in Sumy, killing at least 35 people. And even that 30-hour pause was violated thousands of times, according to both sides. The latest ceasefire is meant to coincide with Russia's 80th anniversary celebrations to mark the Nazi defeat in the Second World War, including the annual military parade through Red Square on May the 9th. Ukrainian officials say the ceasefire should be implemented now if the Kremlin is serious about peace, not just for this. Instead, the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, has listed terms, telling a Brazilian newspaper that international recognition of Crimea and 4 other eastern Ukrainian regions annexed by Russia is imperative, demilitarizing Ukraine, lifting sanctions on Russia, cancelling arrest warrants, and unfreezing Russian assets in the West are also on the agenda, Lavrov added, while Russia will insist on security guarantees to shield it from NATO and European Union threats. But it is the threat posed by Russia that has US allies concerned, and that agreeing to Moscow's terms would make that threat even worse. Matthew Chance, CNN London.
Joining me for his perspective, Fareed Zakaria, host of CNN's Fareed Zakaria GPS. Fareed, what do you make of Vladimir Putin's decision to announce a 3-day ceasefire in May as negotiations for the permanent ceasefire are currently stalled?
It's the most extraordinary act of self-serving non-statesmanship, because he's not really proposing a ceasefire for any purpose that would advance peace, to allow negotiations to begin. Obviously, none of that could be done in 3 days. He's asking for a ceasefire so that he can have a victory parade in Moscow, so that his, his celebrations around, a war anniversary are undisturbed by any bad news on the battlefield. It's not a serious offer that has anything to do with the negotiations. It's really just image management for Vladimir Putin.
It does seem like so much of this is performative, or, I mean, you say image management, being done out in public, which is very unusual. I mean, you had this meeting of Ukraine's President Zelensky in the Vatican, very dramatic image of the two, seated at these chairs, like sort of going to confessional in the middle, in St. Peter's Basilica. And then the president afterward makes a statement on social media questioning Putin's desire for peace, saying it makes me think that maybe he doesn't want to stop the war, he's just tapping me along and has to be dealt with differently. And then lo and behold, a couple days later, Putin makes this performative gesture.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's try to take the most charitable interpretation, because it's important to be open to that possibility. this may be the education of Donald Trump. He may have come to realize what many of us and many people who have been following this war closely have said all along, that the principal obstacle to peace is not Zelensky, but Putin. The principal problem has always been Putin.
Russia's foreign minister said that the country would require international recognition that Crimea and the 4 other Ukrainian provinces that were illegally annexed during the war are Russian territory as imperative for ending the conflict. It doesn't seem like there is a lot being offered to Ukraine. It seems like, you know, the U.S. is going to get a mineral deal or some sort of a deal from Ukraine. Russia will obviously, you know, it seems like Russia wants exactly what they want. It doesn't seem like Ukraine gets a lot.
Correct. Look, I think Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia's statement, is not a deal breaker. That is going to be their opening position. Where we're probably going to end up, I hope, is that there is a kind of de facto acceptance of Russia's annexation of these areas, but there will not be a legal acceptance. I think that's important, Anderson. But you raised the crucial issue, which is what isn't getting discussed is what Ukraine needs to stop fighting is some kind of security guarantee, both from outside countries and also the ability to build and maintain a very powerful army. If it doesn't have those security guarantees, Anderson, it's not going to stop fighting. These guys are fighting for their country, for their freedom, for their independence, for their lives. They're not going to just, even Donald Trump, no matter how powerful the American president is, will not be able to order the Ukrainians to sign their extinction as a nation. They won't accept that.
I'm wondering what you made of his recent remarks in The Atlantic. He said this is President Trump, he said the first time I had 2 things to do, run the country and survive. I had all these crooked guys. And the second time, I run the country and the world.
Well, if he's running the country and the world, he's doing a pretty bad job of it 100 days into his presidency. But look, it's true. The United States president does have this much larger responsibility, and it has had it since 1945. I would hope that that would make him understand that there are some broader responsibilities that come with being president of the United States. You're trying to maintain an open international system. You're trying to maintain a rules-based international order. You're trying to create a world in which conquest and aggression don't pay off, so that people, so we don't have a disorderly, chaotic world where the law of the jungle reigns. I don't get the sense that is how he is viewing it. He seems to be viewing it more as something of an ego trip for him.
Fareed Zakaria, thanks so much.
Yet again, another attempt at manipulation. For some reason, everyone is supposed to wait until May 8 before ceasing fire, just to provide Putin with silence for his parade. We value human lives, not parades.
CNN's Claire Sebastian joins us now live from London. Good morning to you, Claire. So what more are you learning about President Putin's planned 3-day ceasefire beginning May 8th, his motivation for it, and the US response to it?
Well, Rosemary, I think it was entirely predictable amid mounting frustration from Trump, directed in various rare comments towards Putin, and after that conciliatory meeting between President Zelensky and President Trump at the Vatican, that Russia would want to come forward with some kind of gesture like this to try to prove to Trump that they are not standing in the way of peace and to try to salvage that reset, which clearly Russia cares about. I think that is not at all clear that it's worked as of yet. As you noted, the White House has said that they are not looking for some kind of 3-day ceasefire. They want a permanent ceasefire. So it doesn't seem that he has successfully proven his peacemaking capabilities to President Trump at this point. I think the second thing that Russia clearly stands to gain from this, as you also alluded to, is potentially to prevent any long-range strikes by Ukraine on Russia during these very important Victory Day celebrations. This year is the 80th anniversary of Victory Day. It's already a huge day in Russia, and this round number makes it even bigger, plus the fact that many foreign dignitaries, foreign leaders will be attending. It would have been hugely embarrassing for President Putin to have anything go wrong, plus the fact that this also comes several days after the high-profile death of a Russian general in a car bomb just outside of Moscow. So I think they were potentially rattled by this and wanted to try to secure, as President Zelensky suggested, their parade. Now, whether or not this moves the needle in terms of the US threats to walk away from the Ukrainian peace process, I don't think it does at this point. If anything, I think it shows how badly that peace process is going. Russia, with one voice, as it announced this 3-day unilateral ceasefire, said that it was willing to enter into talks with Kiev without preconditions. But as that note came out from the Kremlin, we saw an interview that Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, did with a Brazilian newspaper where he essentially laid out the conditions under which Russia would come to the table, including international recognition of not only Crimea, but of the 4 regions in Ukraine that Russia has partially occupied, not even fully occupied, since 2022, sanctions relief, lifting arrest warrants, no NATO for Ukraine. So all of these things suggest that Russia, its demands have not changed and that it is not serious about getting into this peace process.